Hi. Oh, you know what I should do? If anybody here goes to give presentations for a living or it's something that you want to do, here's this trick to make yourself look very fancy. Can everybody do me a favor and wave while I take a selfie? Let's wave, yay! Thank you. That's my patented picture. It's like the only thing I look like online. My name's Graham McBain. I'm the developer evangelist for a company called XYO Network. We're a proof of origin-based location network. So some of you may have heard the term proof of location. We sort of take the tack that there's no such thing. It's actually impossible to prove that anything was in a given location. You can only prove its origin, where it originated. So there's a lot of detail that will go into that, but that's not what I'm here to talk about today. What I'm really interested in talking about and what I'm really sort of excited about personally is I think that real-world economies, a lot of what we've been talking about, are going to end up getting dwarfed by virtual economies. I wanted to call this originally meat-space economies, but that's a new term and people think it's weird, but I think it's really funny. So what do I mean by that? Has anybody read Snow Crash or Ready Player One or seen the movie Ready Player One? Yeah, so there's a lot of ways to think about real-world assets and digital assets, but I just want to make like the practical case as to why virtual economies are going to be bigger. Real-world assets are extremely hard to make. If you have an idea for how to make a wood bowl, you have to figure out the properties of wood, cut down a tree, go shave it, do all the things you need to do to make that bowl, and then you need to sell it. There's limited trees. You're going to waste a lot of that tree when you're making that bowl. I don't know why I used wood bowls as an example, but I did. And it's got limited extensibility. There's only so much you can do with a bowl. You can put a hole in the bottom of it, call it reclaimed, and make it a sink, but that's really the end of its life cycle at that point. By contrast, virtual asset creation is extraordinarily easy. You can fork some code. You can sort of use the same piece of code in a couple different places. It can have different attributes around it. The waste is limited. There's almost little to no degradation, especially thinking that these aren't going to be kept on sort of single servers. And then it's got almost unlimited extensibility. The sort of things that are happening around CryptoKitties are a really great example that digital assets are just more interesting in many ways. Really why I think the whole ethos or the whole theory that I'm trying to put forward here makes sense is because digital goods enable creativity to immediately capture value. People like Mark Cuban, a lot of large business leaders are saying with artificial intelligence, a lot of other technology coming along, the only thing that humans really have anymore that is of value is our creativity. We have this ability to sort of pull disparate things together and make something new and interesting out of that, and that's something machines aren't going to be able to do for a long time. And the ability to take some creativity, have some code put around it, and then immediately turn that into a token that has its own value is a really short life cycle in the world of like creativity to asset creation, if that makes sense. So I think just the fact that you can rev that so quickly is going to be really exciting. What does that look like though? Because that's really easy to say, and I'm using a lot of platitudes, and it's really fun to get flown to conferences to use platitudes and not say anything really. But I have a theory of going a little bit beyond that. I'm not going to come and talk to you guys Tom Jones style. I just left my notes down here. Last night when I was at a bar down the way called Relish, I took one of the cooks there and I accosted him into talking to me about this stuff. And he was telling me that he plays a game that's a tank warfare game. So it's World War II. He goes in, he rolls around in a tank. And I tried to explain to him that, like, though that is interesting, if he's won thousands of battles with that tank and he's like the most experienced tank warrior in that whole game, who cares? He doesn't get to capture any of the value that he's created for the developers in there. But what if there was a world in which there were tank manufacturers? There were companies that all they did was build digital goods, like digital trucks. There's a virtual GM is the way to think about it. And all they do is build vehicles. And those vehicles act differently depending on the physics of the game arena in which they're available. So in this tank example, he could go and buy a tank from the Digital Wurlitzer Corporation and then take that into any open battlefield that's available on a plasma sidechain or something like that. And that tank would just be subject to the rules of that game. For me personally, that's a much more exciting world to get to live in, because then he could become sort of a storied fighter and he can go on and sell that tank later if it becomes worth more money. Professional sports, this is actually a really exciting one. We've been talking recently with the Kings, the Sacramento NBA team, and wouldn't it be cool if your trading cards could actually be digital collectibles? But even cooler than that, what if they were specific to a moment in a game? So somebody does a huge dunk, it crashes the backboard or something. Obviously, I'm not a sports guy. But you know, you crash the backboard, take a picture of that, and then the team can issue that as a scarce, non-fungible token or trading card of that individual asset. And you can only get it if you were there at the stadium. I think that kind of stuff is really incredible for people to be able to capture value. Mixed reality is really where I talked about Ready Player One. Whether or not we like it, like the reason I'm wearing this Ethereum shirt right now is because I want to virtue signal that I'm cool and that I know who Vitalik is. People want to do that. When mixed reality comes out, they're going to want to do that. And they're going to want to do that many times a day. People are spending, you know, $20 on skins in games like Fortnite. There's no reason they're not going to want to do that in the different mixed reality worlds that they're in. And those need to be verifiably unique digital assets. Finally, with art, I think that's actually a pretty solid use case there. Or pretty easy to understand. Each one's unique, and so you want to make sure that they're unique. So I don't like to talk at people. Also, I was drinking last night, so I'd rather just answer questions. So that's generally my assumption. I think that virtual economies are going to be 10, 12x the size of real-world economies. So prove me wrong. Any questions? Yes, sir. Did you have a question, or you're just waving your hand? Okay.
I might have missed it right at the start, but what is XYO again?
Oh, XYO is a proof of location network.
Okay.
Yeah. I could talk about that too if you guys want, but that's not why I'm here.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Oh, okay. So who's here has heard of foam protocol? Okay, so we're all talking about how blockchain is going to take over every industry in the world, right? So one of the major industries is physical things moving from place to place. And so what we're developing is a way for our SDK to be in any device. And that SDK is going to create what's called a proof of origin network. And it's basically just a scale of certainty that a device or a person or a thing was in a given location. So you could imagine that you want to ship a package somewhere across the world. And then when that package arrives, instead of having to send the money through fiat, it could just be once that package arrives in the warehouse, the money is released from the contract that was holding it while it was shipping. And so in order to be able to prove that it left the facility it wanted to, got on the right boat, got off the right boat, on the right truck, and then dropped at the next facility in the other location, our network is built to prove that each one of those steps happened to whatever verifying degree that the company wants. So yeah, it's a oracle for real-world location data. For that? Yeah. So you can, any shipping logistics company, that kind of thing, and then there's, there's all manner of stuff. Basically, anytime anyone who wants to know location of a given object or needs to. Yeah. Somebody had a question over here?
What's the XYO stand for?
Well, XY like location, and then O for Oracle. So the XY Oracle network is the way to think about it. Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly how it works. So the way that our network works is we've got four major pieces. There's the Sentinels, that's the SDK that's sort of running around and saying, I was here. It sees another SDK, oh, we saw each other, and that's sort of where the mesh starts to happen. The next one is bridges, and those are just people who take that data and sync it to a historic, like an archivist is the third part of it. And then there's the endpoints that developers can hit. So developer can say, hey, tell me that this was here. And then you pay for that query in our token. So that's how the network works. Yeah? Yes. So the way that would work is that if you've got a manufacturing facility, take fish oil, right? It needs to be refrigerated the whole time. Don't ask me why I know this, but so what you would do is as soon as the completed product comes off the line, it would be put into a case that has a beacon in it, and then that beacon would be able to say, I came online, and immediately it would do a handshake with the actual facility itself. And when it goes into the given freezer, and then it moves from the freezer to the truck. So all the spaces that it goes into, as long as they're all properly frozen, it's like that's heuristic data that would come along with each one of the beacons that it shares. So yes, absolutely, you could do this. Yeah. Ensure that it was. Great question. Yes. So in order to. we want to approve this, but we think that things like a multi-million-dollar fish shipment is probably not the great way to test this. So we're building a Pokemon Go style game we'll be launching at our conference later this summer, and that should be any digital collectible will be able to be found or sold. So that's the conversation that we're having with the Sacramento Kings, is to hide NFTs around the stadium. And so in between plays, they could say, hey, if you go find this, this, and this, you'll get tickets to the next game, that sort of thing. So we think that's a really fun way to both get the SDK onto people's phones and to prove out the network that it does what it says it's going to do. Because people were spoofing GPS location to win rare Pokemon. And so if we can solve that problem for Pokemon, we think we can solve it for other stuff. It was a big, yeah, as the Pokemon guy is very concerned about it, yes. So I live in Sacramento. I'm going to be flying back there this evening, but super happy to talk about any of this stuff. If you're interested in non-fungible tokens, digital collectibles, I love being a resource for people. Bob was a super good resource to me when I wanted to get into this space about a year ago, so I always want to carry that on. So yeah, thank you guys. Vancouver's amazing, by the way.